Hey, what up? I haven't done a YouTube video in a while, so since I really don't have much else to do, I'm gonna basically make a little. I'm just gonna, just go through my CD collection. Just store-bought CDs that I have accumulated over the last 10 years. I think I have about 50 something store-bought CDs over the last 10 years. I bought more off iTunes. I bought a lot of CDs off iTunes. I started buying CDs back in like the early part of 2003, I think. And I still buy physical hard copies of albums that I like or want to this day. I started buying albums off iTunes after the record store that I used to go to in the mall in my, close to my hometown, after that store closed down. So I've been going on iTunes for, I say now, about 4 years now. 4 years I've been buying albums off iTunes, but I've been buying albums off been buying albums out the store for like the last 10 years. And I accumulated over 50 CDs off out of the store alone, out of iTunes, maybe 20, 20 or more. But I'm gonna just go. This is gonna be the rundown of the albums that I bought out of the store. Because I still kept the booklets and everything. The only thing I didn't keep was, for most of these CDs, were the like cases, because I thought that was kind of pointless. But I still keep the booklets for all the albums and the physical CDs. So I'm gonna go do a little rundown of those. First album, Ja Rule's Last Temptation. This was Ja Rule's final platinum selling album. This obviously came out right after the 50 Cent beef, right before the 50 Cent beef really took effect. This was a pretty good album. I enjoyed it. There were some songs, The Pledge was really the selling point of the album for me. I really liked that song. And, there are other good songs on there, and there were other good songs on there. But this is definitely one of the very first actual rap album that I ever bought. And it was a pretty good album. I don't regret buying this album at all because I remember how much I used to listen to it before it came out. I used to listen to it when it came out. So this is a pretty good album to me. I really enjoyed it, and it was a pretty good album. I really did enjoy this album. Second CD, obviously, 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying, which was the album of the year as far in 2003. Definitely the best-selling album in all of music. I bought this album that July. The album came out like February, but I bought it in July. And it was a great fucking album. I sincerely think it's a classic, because I remember like it was really for a while the only thing you heard anybody else play. Like even in the South, nobody was playing nothing else but this album. He was the be-all, end-all of rap music. Nobody else was on his level. Nobody else came close to his level. And I really enjoyed this album. I thought this album had great songs on it. Some say this is 50's best work. It's kind of hard to disagree with him because you look at 50 Cent now, he's only a shell of the celebrity that he used to be. It's like there was a time when the guy couldn't walk down the street without being mobbed. Would that happen today in the South or anywhere else? I'm not sure, but this album was definitely a moment in time, and it was a great fucking album. I don't listen to it as much anymore, but it was a great album. Don't regret buying it at all. My first Jay-Z album, Black Album. I really enjoyed this album. I think it's a classic. It is a great album. A lot of people, including myself, thought that this was going to be it. So, and even though I haven't, I've been listening to rap for a while, but it's actually like the first Jay-Z album I actually bought. I heard Jay-Z albums before, but this is one I felt like I had to go buy, and I went ahead and bought it. And I still listen to some of this album. I still listen to this album, to this day. I bought this about maybe a week after it came out, and it was a great album. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely if his career would have ended on this, what a career it would have been. But he obviously put out more albums, and those other albums, they weren't bad albums, but none have come close to. But this is definitely what is an appropriate swan song, if you ask me. Had a lot of great songs on there. Just a great album. Diplomats, Diplomatic Immunity, or Dipset, whatever you want to call them. I bought this album mainly because my brother-in-law, he had it, and I like the beats on it. But as I later learned, the beats were basically, if anything, the only good thing about the album. I mean, as far as the rapping is concerned, it was whatever. But overall, it was a great. It was a. I play. I'm gonna be for. I'm gonna be real. It's like one of the few albums that actually do have some regret in buying. This is one of the albums, like, if I could go back, all those years ago, maybe '04 when I got it, I think I definitely would have left this album on the rack. Looking back on it now, but it is what it is. I mean, I wouldn't recommend this album to anybody, to be honest with you. Sometimes I even forget that I even have it, but it's whatever. Chicken and Beer by Ludacris. Me, my friends, most of my friends at the time during high school were big Ludacris fans. I was as well. Ludacris is a great rapper, and I thought this was a great album. Definitely a great follow up to his multi-platinum selling Word of Mouth. I mean, I've had great songs on it. I mean, a lot of club bangers, a lot of, just great lyricism throughout. This was just overall a great album. Debuted at #1, went platinum, I think double or triple platinum, I'm not quite sure. But this was a great fucking album. Ludacris definitely did his thing as usual. Highly underrated. It is so criminal how underrated this man really is. Yes, this right here. Kanye West's College Dropout. One of my all-time favorite albums, bar none. This album right here is incredible. I still listen to this album to this day. This to me is one of the best debut albums to come out in the last 10 years. No question about that. I mean, Kanye is just wickedly talented. Yes, the guy has an ego. The guy is a dick. But let's be honest. This man is every bit as good as he says he is, in my personal opinion. To me, there's not one song on here worth skipping. I can listen to this album back and forth all day long. Great album. Kanye West, College Dropout, one of my all-time favorite albums. Absolutely love this album. I just love this album. G-Unit's Beg for Mercy. Obviously, this right here was pretty much a label ploy. This is pretty much a label power move. They basically wanted to capitalize off the success of 50 Cent because, let's be honest, had Get Rich or Die Trying not been as successful, this album would not have came out, some 9 months later, some 9-10 months later. But this album, it was okay. I definitely like the production on it. Banks and Buck, they definitely brought it lyric-wise. I mean, it was just a pretty good album, but, it was basically just the label, Interscope's attempt just to, cash in. But other than that, I enjoyed it. It was a pretty good album. There really was nothing, they really didn't do a lot of wrong with this album. It was pretty good, and it did its purpose, which was to help G-Unit get over. All right, Chronic 2001. One of my friends gave me this. And up to this point, I never really heard it. Well, I heard it, but I never really listened to every single song. I like this album. I like the production. I like the fact that sometimes you hear the rapping Dre and you hear the producing Dre. I mean, Dr. Dre definitely shows his many roles on this album. He shows his rapping, then he shows the production, the king of production, Dr. Dre. Then he shows the rapper, Dr. I mean, this is just a great album. Runs kind of long, but I enjoyed it. I definitely like this album. I don't regret my friend picking this up and, letting me hold on to this for a while. Twisters, Kamikaze. I like this. This is okay album, It basically, it was an okay album, let's say at least. It definitely Twisters' breakthrough, because before then, he really hadn't done much in quite a while. Definitely had the mainstream hits, such as Slow Jams and Overnight Celebrity, which is the only two reasons the album even sold what it did. And, basically had some classic Twista, street shit. But overall, this was an okay album, Like on a scale of 1 to 10, like on a scale of 1 to 5, you give it, I say it's a 3.5 easy. It was definitely a pretty good album. And Twista, as usual, can rap his ass off. I don't think anybody can deny that. But Twista, like I always said, his one flaw is he doesn't mature. The same songs he performed now, he was performing 10, 15 years ago. He doesn't mature with his music. But overall, this is a great album, and I really enjoyed it. Encore. Definitely, without question, most people would say, including myself, the weakest in Eminem's entire discography. No question. But was it a bad album? Not entirely, but it definitely could have been a lot better than what it actually was. You know, there were some good songs on here I felt, but other than that, you know, some songs on here just, you know, clearly made no sense or were just silly or just didn't have anything behind them. You know, it seems forced almost. See, like he just forced his album out, in my personal opinion. You know, but I mean, do I regret buying this album? No, not really, because I'm an Eminem fan. I really like Eminem. So this album was okay. Let's just say it like that. It was okay. The Massacre, definitely, it was like 50 Cent's commercial answer to Get Rich or Die Trying. You know, there were definitely a lot more commercial songs on here, a lot more songs meant for the radio. But, you know, I mean, not a lot of, I mean, it was an okay album, to say the least. It wasn't like the follow the big classic that everybody expected him to follow up with. Definitely, you can hear the sophomore slump in this, you know, because he obviously had gigantic expectations for this one. I mean, sales wise, I'm pretty sure he did. I'm pretty sure he met those. Sales wise, I think he met those expectations, but as far as quality wise, I don't know. I mean, that's really up to the listener's discretion. But overall, it was an okay album. You know, yeah, some hits, some misses, but overall, it was okay. The documentary. This was a pretty good. This was for a debut album. This was pretty fucking good. This was pretty damn good for a debut album. You know, even though back then most of us didn't see it, he did do a lot of name dropping even back then, which is evident. But there were a lot of songs on here that were fucking genius in my opinion, such as Start From Scratch, which I really enjoyed. And there was one song on here, I can't think of the name. Let me look. I swear, because I ain't heard this album in quite a while. I liked Running. Yeah, the title track. The title track was a great song, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed the title track. But overall, this is a pretty good album. You know, even though when you look back on it now, this was really the peak of Game's career. You know, his career hasn't been nearly as strong since. But overall, this is a pretty good album. Ludacris, Red Light District, second Ludacris album I bought. This was one of those albums I bought mainly because it's Ludacris. I had a lot of expectations for Ludacris. I thought it was gonna be good, but it turns out this album was not all that good. There were some songs on it that were great. There were some songs on there that were pretty good, but for the most part, it really wasn't. You know, it was definitely nowhere near the caliber of a Chicken and Beer or a Word of Mouth. But it was an okay album, you know. But would I buy it again? Probably not. I probably wouldn't buy this album again. You know, this is probably one of those albums that I just would have left at the record store. But it is what it is. John Legend. First, going to R&B now. John Legend. This was a great album. I really enjoyed it. He had a lot of beats on here that obviously were rap influenced that rappers could have rapped over. I mean, he has Kanye and Snoop Dogg as guest appearances, but overall, this is a great album. It was definitely much different than what anybody else was doing in R&B at the time. And John Legend really, it was what I expected. I expected an album to be, as far as on the R&B side, have a musical quality that College Dropout did on the rapping side, and it did. It met that. I mean, R&B wise, as far as singing and playing the piano and playing instruments and song quality, John Legend definitely did a great job with this album. You know, and is it his best work? I don't think it's his best work, but I think his best work is yet to come if it hasn't came already. But overall, this is a pretty good album, and I definitely don't regret buying it. Still listen to some of the songs on this to this day. B. This album right here is up there with the College Dropout as one of my all-time favorites. This album right here can't do no wrong. Short, not a lot of guest features, great production, quality, originality, just a great album. Love this album. Still listen to this album. This album will not leave my iPod for as long as I live. I love, love, love this album. Late Registration by Kanye West. Great album. I enjoyed it. I definitely, to me, a little bit below College Dropout, definitely. But overall, I enjoyed this album. I thought it was a great album. I was really anticipating it, and Kanye delivered. he met expectations. I mean, the guy can rap, the guy can produce. The guy musically wise can't do no wrong. I bought every single album that Kanye ever came out with, whether it was on iTunes or in the store. Kanye West can literally do no wrong musically. The man has never put out a bad album, and this album is no different. Little Brother, Minstrel Show. Great album, phenomenal album. I didn't hear about these guys on the radio, obviously. I didn't hear about them on BET, even though I did see their video on BET once. I heard about these guys strictly on the internet. Strictly how the bloggers and everybody were boosting them up, the reviews they got for this album. And I was like, you know what the hell, let me go check it out. And I'm glad I did. This was a great album. I think it's a damn shame that these guys did not get the break that they deserve. I mean, even though this album did come off Atlantic Records, I hate that they didn't get the promotion or they didn't get the break that, other artists are just given. But overall, this album, hands down, a phenomenal fucking album. And I think it's a damn shame that this group is no longer together. But overall, these guys are still doing music, and these guys are still pretty damn good at music. So I'm definitely very, very happy about this album. Lil' Kim's Naked Truth. Now, back in 2005, everybody was calling this a classic. I disagree. On a scale of 1 to 5, obviously the source gave it 5 mics, which was definitely a big promotion point at this time, and of course her going to jail and everything. But overall, this album, in my personal opinion, it was a great album, definitely one of the best albums of 2005. But would I say it's a classic, like one of those albums that holds weight 10 years down the line? Absolutely not. But overall, a great fucking album. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a good album. I don't listen to it very much now, but there were a lot of songs on here that were really, really good. Shame to say she hasn't put out an album since. But hopefully, if she does put out another album, hopefully it is just as good or better than this album is right here. I bought this back in 2006, obviously. This album came out some 12 years prior. But this is, I just need a lot of lyricism. Yeah, I just like this album. I really do. I'm not ashamed to say, that I didn't buy Nas's Illmatic back in the 90s. Fuck it, I was a kid in the 90s. I wasn't buying rap albums. I was buying video games. But this album right here is a great fucking album. I don't think there's anything I can say about this album that hasn't been said, So, I still listen to it to this day. Still in heavy rotation on my iPod. I enjoy this album. This is a great album. I really do. I really like this album. Common Like Water for Chocolate. This album, I bought this, because Common didn't put out an album in 2006, and I wanted some new Common music, or to do a little backtracking. So I bought Like Water for Chocolate. Don't regret buying it. Love this album. This is a great album. Definitely has a lot of beats on here that are different. Even for that time, it was kind of different. And this was a pretty good album. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of songs on it. I enjoyed the production. I enjoyed the direction he was going with this. Even though next album he went with Electric Circus. But this album right here was a pretty good album. And at the time, his most successful album. So I do not regret buying this album at all, not one bit. Blueprint, my favorite Jay-Z album. No question, this is my favorite Jay-Z album. Jay-Z has put out a lot of good albums, but this right here is my personal favorite. I still play this album to this day. I enjoy this album. I love this album. This album right here, obviously, some say most say it's a classic. I have to agree with them. It is a classic. It is Jay-Z's best work, in my personal opinion. I've just enjoyed the hell out of this album. Definitely his best work, in my personal opinion. The Big Bang, Busta Rhymes. This album came out in summer 2006. Basically, the selling points for this album were the singles. He also had New York Shit, which was getting the heavy airplay on, like the music stations and everything. And on top of that, his killer performance at the BET Awards. He just really bought it. And I was like, I got to buy this album. I bought this album, loved the production, loved the direction he was going with it. I loved the last song on it, which was a concept song, basically called Legend of the Fall Offs. It was basically about, you know, artists who, you know, were just, who literally just fell off. I mean, you listen to that song, just, I recommend anybody go listen to Legend of the Fall Offs. Great, 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 great song. Definitely one of my, Legend of Fall Offs probably go down as one of my all-time favorite rap records. I love that record. This song, this album right here is a damn good album. I enjoyed it. I just wish his second album, the album after that, Back on My Bullshit, was just as strong, which it wasn't. But I'll get into that later on. What can I say, man? Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor. This album was the shit to me. My teacher downloaded this album for me. I listened. He gave me a bootleg copy of this album. I listened to it. The next day, I gave it to my cousin, and I bought this album like a week later. This album right here is without question a phenomenal fucking album. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. All right. I mean, Lupe is sometimes so underrated as an artist, but albums like this remind me of how good he is, how good he always will be. I mean, I'm just a huge, huge Lupe fan. Bought every album he ever put out. There's a part 2 of this album coming out next month. I am definitely buying that. No question. I am buying that. I am buying that album. And I don't regret buying this album. I still play some of the songs on here to this day. This album right here is fucking amazing. Documentary. The Game's well, not documentary, but Doctor's Advocate. Doctor's Advocate was pretty good. It was a lot more. It was somewhat more the same from the documentary. Only difference is obviously he had a lot of drama at the time. You know, he just was brought with this beef with 50 Cent, just got dropped from Dre's label, you know. So basically he was a man on his own. It's like, how can he do on his own? How can Game do without Dr. Dre, without 50 Cent at the helm? And he did pretty damn good with this album. I can't deny that. Yeah, the name dropping is still there, but great beats, great concepts. I mean, overall, it's a great album. I don't listen to it very much now, but overall, this is a great album. Definitely no sophomore slump here. You know, I mean, when you say who had the biggest sophomore slump, I obviously say out of Dr. Dre and 50 Cent, who had the biggest sophomore slump, I definitely say 50 Cent had a bigger sophomore slump because 50 Cent's second album wasn't nearly as strong as Game's second album was. This was a strong second album, and I really enjoyed it. John Legends once again. This album was a lot different. Well, not a lot different from the first album. Only difference with this album is there was less of a hip hop influence, and it was more of an actual music influence. You know, he definitely, a lot of people call John Legend the Blackbird Baccarat. This album right here definitely solidified that he definitely earned that nickname with this album right here. Great album. He put out just a lot of piano heavy, melody heavy music. I mean, the guy he just has it, you know. I mean, he's just a great artist overall. He's great at singing. He's great at playing piano. He's not better at either one. He's just as good as one as he is in the other, you know. And this album had a lot of great songs on it, had a lot of things on it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I thought this was a great fucking album. And anything John Legend, just like Kanye, just like Lupe, is one of those artists that just can't do any wrong in my personal opinion. So John Legends, once again, great album. That's half of my albums. I got like another half I'm gonna do. I'm gonna post that video up sometime soon. But as far as that album that's just 25. I got like 25 more. And then I'm going to probably do a video on my iTunes albums, you know, that are basically just bootleg copies of CDs. Even though I bought them off iTunes, I just backed them up. But overall, that's just half of the list. I'm going to do some more, and I'll post that video up later on. So, you know, I'll just hit you back.